on top of the stars. Never thought we'd ever get this far. We live for moments like this. We come alive in moments like
Craziest injury I've seen was when I was in grad school. I was working at a military academy, so high school students. One football player was side tackled and fractured his tibia fibula. So I was with my preceptor, and I mean, you could see it was completely fractured. Now it was closed, so no bone, but it was very obvious. But I kept my cool. I covered it with a towel. I spoke to the athlete. He was digging his fingers in the ground. I remembered that, and it just poor kid. And he made a full recovery. But that was the craziest thing I've seen personally.
One of the craziest injuries I've dealt with was definitely spine boarding someone at a youth hockey tournament. He had all the classic signs and symptoms of having something wrong with his spine, but when EMS arrived, they were really hesitant to believe me and to believe the athlete, unfortunately, that was the level of care that he needed. And so care ended up being delayed for him for a little bit, just because we were essentially having a little bit of an argument over what kind of care he needed. So I think for me that was the craziest, just because I later found out that unfortunately I was right about what I was worried about, and he did have several broken vertebrae in his back. So luckily he did get the best care possible, but there was just a little bit of a bump in the road on the way, unfortunately.
The craziest injury I've ever witnessed was to my basketball athletes. He was a 6'9" center. He went up for a dunk and came down with a complete tib-fib fracture. We got him off the court, and by the time he was there, he was already going into shock. So that was probably my wildest injury I've ever had to deal with.
I would have to say dislocations. In general, I've seen an elbow dislocation in football where the kid went down, fell out like this. This bone was still in the skin and everything, but it was jutted out. Just covered it and said, we're just gonna get you along on the ambulance and get you to somebody who can help you here. I've seen knee dislocations, patella dislocations, finger dislocations. Each time they're just interesting to see when you see something that's where it shouldn't be.
Craziest injury I'd ever seen was a soccer player who went up for a head ball. He was undercut and he landed on his face. When he got up, he came running over to me, blood gushing out of his mouth, and I took a look into his mouth, and his front two teeth were still intact in his gums, but his gum was pushed back into the back of his mouth about an inch. So we had the ambulance come, they rushed him to the hospital, and they did emergency plastic surgery on him, put some braces on him, and he was luckily good to go.
Well, the one that probably hurts the most is sitting in the dugout in Game 7 twice with the Chicago Cubs and the Pittsburgh Pirates as an athletic trainer, and not getting that last out to go to the World Series. So those were very tough times. I knew that there was a financial reward. I knew that there was just an reward, to get to that level and get to that next series of games. But both times the teams I was with, we fell short, and it was hard to go in that locker room after the game and know that just across the hallway another team was celebrating and they were going to go to the World Series. So that's a pretty prominent memory in my mind.
I'll never forget, it was a playoff situation with Clarion Area High School. I traveled up with them towards New York. I had student athletic trainers at the time. We were all really excited, but all throughout the week it was snowing. So we knew it was going to be kind of a frigid day. It was dumping buckets of snow when we got there. You couldn't even see the field. They had to take snow plows and plow the lines at each quarter just so we could get the game in. There were heaters on the sidelines. I made hot cocoa and chicken broth for the athletes at the halftime, which they were super grateful about because it was so unbelievably cold. It was just something that I don't think any of my students or I will ever forget, because I just never in my million sports have I ever been able to see the snow dump as much.
2017 back-to-back Stanley Cup championships. I really can't compare what I experienced there to anything else. Or I'm very lucky to be a part of the clubs that won the Stanley Cups those years.
The world from Spanish